to get right into the PWI mess, because the same way I seem annoyed right now, I was already annoyed at a lot of things going on when it comes to this list. Now, I haven't listened to anybody else's take on the list. So if I'm repeating something that you heard over the last few days from other people or something like that, I promise you, this is just my pure reactions to the list. I avoided everything else that people said about it on purpose because honestly, I don't really put too much stock into these things, but it is a great tool for content. So I was like, hey, why not? Let's check it out, see what people think. PWI, keep in mind, is definitely all about within kayfabe. So if your favorite wrestler is not mentioned or low or whatever the situation may be, it's not necessarily an indictment on what they actually bring to the table as a worker. So I do want to keep that in mind. But some of these PWI things, even if you want to look at it through a kayfabe lens, it's like, okay, this is kind of an out-of-date type of thing. Or if it's not, and I know you have to take like the entire year, I think, since the last time into account. So I get that, but it's just some things going on. Like, honestly, I don't see how, if you've been watching wrestling over the last year, how Moxley is so low. John Moxley was number one, I think, the year he came to AEW, or at least the year he left WWE and kind of went to New Japan and also went to AEW, became their champion. He was number one on this list. I can make the case that everything he's done as interim champion, everything he's done to keep AEW afloat, not only just recently, because obviously he's the heart and soul right now. I think he's probably the most trusted and like he is the guy when it comes to what AEW. I think anyone who's watching currently knows that he is top. He's just He's the greatest representation that they have with almost no red flags. A lot of other people right now who are in certain positions in AEW, even Jericho to an extent, he's a legend and all, but of course you have those people who are tired of, the way he's been portrayed and a lot of the things that he's done on television. Other guys, even though Moxley's a WWE guy himself, he's not as much of an ex-WWE guy as someone may look at Danielson or may look at maybe a Miro or some of these other guys, even though he definitely was just as important in WWE as any of them was in his time there. The way he exited and what he's done since then has kind of separated him from that Dean Ambrose type of outlook. So, again, I don't see how Moxley's number 12, below guys, even though I don't mind Jonathan Gresham. I love Big E, but again, maybe since then, because I think it was just a couple days ago, a year since Big E won the WWE title. So, I get it. I understand that if you're taking all of that into account, he became WWE champion and all of that, even though the run ended up being not what I think any of us really wanted it to be and how it ended. And then what he did after that before getting injured was tough. So I understand why he's there. It's just, again, I think now when you look at wrestling through the lens that we're looking at it now, it's kind of tough to remember exactly where Big E was before all of that stuff started to happen to him. And the reign kind of went bad. So I get that. I have no problem with Big E being there because I love Big E, but it's still hard to be like, he had a better year in wrestling than Moxley. He had a better year in wrestling than Shingo Takagi, who was one of the most consistent guys. And if you're taking last year into account, he was the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion for a big chunk of that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, because all the way up to Kazuchika Okada at number 2 is hard for me to even argue with anything. Even Hijo del Vikingo, I'm not gonna act like I know a lot about him, but just in the little research I did after seeing him so high, I can understand it just from watching. I saw like a 90-second clip, and I'm like, okay, if he can pull this off, some of this stuff off consistently, that he's sick. And I'm from what I understand, he's really, really good at it. So it was good to see AAA get some love in the top 10. And Danielson being up there, he's been, if not confused or legitimately called the best wrestler in the world for a long time. Cody Rhodes at 6, before he tore his pec, he was on an unbelievable run in WWE. And, and we all know about his winning percentage towards the end of his run in AEW. Other than a few, TNT title match losses, Cody rarely lost anyway. So it makes sense for him to be in good standing Kayfabe wise, Bobby Lashley's been absolutely dominant for a long time, and now as United States champion, they're starting to, and I'll get into more about the United States title in my rumors, but the way they've been depicting him as United States champion, you can't tell me he doesn't feel just as big as maybe not just as big because we know where Roman is right now, but he feels like trying to take his title or trying to challenge him as a champion so far right now. He's probably one of the best protected champions up there with Gunther and Roman right now. So, and like I said, not to take into account who the hell did Big E took the title from a year ago. It was Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
So again, to take into account over the year since the last issue was put out, Bobby has definitely earned his spot. And I can make the case that maybe he can be a little higher, but I have no problem with Adam Page being right above him and then CM Punk right there. And again, maybe you can switch those two out. I know after recent stuff, it's hard to even want to talk about Punk's year in review, but he's had a great year. He's only lost a handful of matches pretty much. And, he's ended up, if you going by kayfabe, he's been pretty much one of the strongest booked people in wrestling, and before having to give up the belt, was a 2-time AEW champion, so it makes sense. Adam Page, again, like we said, I always made the case that when they gave Punk the first time, that Page shouldn't have lost that match. I remember that's who I picked when they had that title match. I wanted Page to retain, keep this going. I figured Punk would get it, but I just thought Hangman Page's run, he was doing great, and I thought he could do even better. But they cut that short, but I don't think anyone can argue with where he's at. And then right here, the top two spots. Of course, it came down to Okada and Roman Reigns. And Kazuchika Okada actually went right in that order. Okada was number 2. Roman Reigns is number 1. Congratulations. I'm pretty sure, again, I don't necessarily have to tell anyone much of, I think everyone knows why Roman is what he is. Like, he hasn't lost in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't lost pre-pandemic, I don't think, since the pandemic. And at this point, since the pandemic, I guess it's still considered going on right now, right?
Yeah.
They don't talk about it nowhere near as much. I think that
I feel like
at this point, COVID cases is just
they're just
the
there.
flu, I guess. Yeah, it's just there, right? Yeah, it's nothing now at this point. At least from the way people talk about it. But anyway, the point is, he hasn't lost, and from what I'm hearing, probably won't lose for a long time. So again, Roman Reigns being there is fine. Kazuchika Okada has only lost like a handful of times in the last year. That being the Jay White, Jonah, and having a couple other missteps every now and then. But Okada is usually clean, usually going over, and so it makes sense that he would be this high. Some questionable things or some people that I want to mention along this list as I continue to go down it. I definitely want to give Matt Cardona love, someone who's spent a lot of time backstage and catering, being Zack Ryder in WWE, for him to be number 13, for him to be above people like Hiroshi Tanahashi, Josh Alexander, you know what I mean? Even MJF, Seth Rollins. Like, think about that. Zack Ryder or Matt Cardona right now is above Seth Rollins on this list. And it actually makes sense if you've been keeping up with everything he's been doing, at least as far as like becoming world champion and just, working everywhere that he can. And like I said, I don't think Matt Cardona, if he was to come back to WWE, it would do him justice to even like acknowledge Zack Ryder. He should come back as Matt Cardona almost. Like, that's just how much he's established a different air about himself. Let's say it that way. When it comes to, like, with Zack Ryder, yeah, some people still loved him and knew how good he was because how he got over on the internet. But to look at him now and to actually take him seriously as a competitor, and just seems like he's in good spirits most of the time. Good for him, even if he's rubbed some people the wrong way. He's, like I said, you can't tell me you can imagine Zack Ryder being this high on this list years ago. So he's done a great job, whether you like him or not. Again, MJF being 16 above Seth Rollins. Some people may want to argue about that, but MJF has a really good track record right now. Adam Cole being right there below Seth Rollins. Kenny Omega still making the top 20, even though he was injured most of this, I guess 9 months out of this last year. Honestly, he's been gone, or like 10 months, I think. Either way it goes, doesn't matter. Good for Kenny. He's great. I guess that just shows you where his standing was for him to only fall kind of down to 19. So yeah, Drew McIntyre wrapping up the top 20. Again, you can make the case that he should be much higher. Moose right under him. Chris Jericho, 22. The way he wins, I can't be mad at it. Yeah, it's kind of high. You don't want to see Jericho above a guy like Jay White, who's the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. But again, Jericho rarely loses in like big time situations. So kayfabe wise, I guess I get it. And you can't necessarily be mad at that. Then we have Braun Breaker going down here to 26, and I really have to talk about this. As much as I like Braun Breaker, and he is the future, I do not think he belongs above Will Ospreay. But from a kayfabe standpoint, and like you mentioned before the show, Braun Breaker is the NXT champion. He has, matter of fact, I think he's like a 2-time NXT champion, and he's done, he's done really, really good in his runs, and he's rarely lost. As a matter of fact, if you're going off kayfabe, I think he's only lost like once to Ciampa. He lost to Ciampa, and then even in the triple threat scenario when Dolph won the title, I don't think he was the one to get pinned. So again, Breaker has been really, really protected. So I get it. I really do. I understand that. And Ospreay has lost in some of these big time matches, even if the matches were great. And again, we gotta keep in mind, as mad as this make me, it's not about match quality. It's more so about where your standing is, kayfabe wise. And so I guess I have to accept it. But what I won't accept is Sammy Guevara being ahead of Zack Sabre Jr. Even if it's one slide Sammy on down, okay? I'm sorry. It's just simple as that. He's nowhere near Zack Sabre Jr. But it's, again, kayfabe-wise, because Zack definitely, even though he picks up big wins, he will lose. Like, he lost the title match at the New Japan Cup again. You know what I'm saying? And Sammy Guevara, if I want to give this whole year in review, as much as I hated this feud and run, I think he won the TNT titles like 2 more times over the last year or something like that. So, again, I gotta go ahead and give it up, if you see what I'm saying. And I'm going to round out. I'm going to stop at 30 because, again, I can just go down this list and mention all the people I know and love because we can just keep going. But I'm going to stop right here at Speedball Mike Bailey, who's awesome. Of course, I would like Tetsuya Naito to be higher than 62. But, again, that's my personal bias. Another guy who was out with injury for a while, you know what I'm saying? So, again, I understand. Finn Balor was left off of big pay-per-views. You see what I'm saying? So I get that. You got to take the entire year in review, and I think that's what's been tough on a lot of people talking about all of this because you're looking at a name, you see a name like Randy Orton like in the 40s down there, and you're like, it's no way some of these guys are whatever than Randy Orton, but you got to take the last year into account. And Randy has been awesome and great when he was there, but, injury and, what he was doing, it was not like world title type of thing. So, again, you have to keep that in mind. But that's my take on it. The PWI 500 always gets people talking. I'm glad it, at least gave me a good 15 minutes of content. So I will give it that. But yeah, I'm not too high or too low on the list. But it's like, how the hell can you argue with the top 5 really? And even how can you argue with Roman? Yes, we can play around with the orders and all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, Roman probably was always going to be number 1. He's undefeated, and I think it's well deserved. So